Welcome back on You Me Web3 podcast, the podcast where we discuss Web3 technologies and how they influence in our world. Let me introduce our podcast host, Mark Forster.
First of all, thanks a lot for having me here too, and happy International Women's Day. I think that's a memorable event, and I think it's perfectly fitting that we have the majority of women on this call today to discuss this topic, because it shows that we're taking the topic of International Women's Day and technology very seriously, which I think is great. Maybe just a couple of words about myself. I've been in tech for a bit more than 20 years, a bit more than 10 years in AI. So we started with deep learning and all those kind of algorithms. And within Lab 51, we help clients reap the benefits of AI and also recently more Web3 technologies, which are obviously a large part of the next generation of the internet. And one interesting development in there, which has been around for a while, is blockchain and all the cryptocurrencies, which is the topic of today. So I'm super excited to have this conversation today with Delphine, but more from her directly.
And let me introduce our today's guest, Delphine Forma.
Hi everyone, I'm Anya, I'm Mark, I'm delighted to be here and I can't wait to talk about blockchain technology and crypto. And happy Women's Day to all the women who are listening to us today.
Speaking about you, could you please tell us about your background and what are you doing currently? And how did you get into the topic of Web3 and cryptocurrency and blockchain?
Yeah, of course. So as you can tell by my accent, I'm from France and I've studied law and political science. And when I was younger, I've always been passionate about international affairs and human rights. I started my career working for a startup in France, and I moved to Japan, where I was a recruiter and organizing art exhibition for French artists. And then I moved to UK, where I work in banking. But where it all started, it was in Japan, actually. So back in 2012, that was the first time I heard about Bitcoin. And in Japan, they were having those Bitcoin meetups. So I was like, okay, you know what? I was recruiting for gaming, right? So I was like in the tech sector anyway. And I was like, let's go and attend and see, what's going on there. And I find it fascinating, but I was thinking, oh, I really want to invest, but I was so scared to give my credit card number and buy crypto like that I was like, no, I can't do it. They're going to steal all my money. This is not good. It's a bunch of criminals. So unfortunately, I didn't do it in 2012. But then back in 2017, I was working in HSBC and they were experimenting using blockchain technology to streamline their trade finance processes. So at that time, I was like, sounds interesting. And I started reading a book that changed everything for me. The book is called Cryptocurrency, the Future of Money by Paul Vigna and Michael Casey. And it was published, I think, in 2016 or 17. But I remember I was reading this book. The more I was reading the book, the more I was like, let's buy Ethereum, let's buy. It was so funny. And this is when I decided to take the leap. Also, I didn't want it to be an old compliance officer working in banking. So in January 2018, I left London. I moved to Zug in Switzerland. So Zug is a crypto valley, but it's a very, very tiny village in the middle of Switzerland. It's close to Zurich, 20 minutes away. And I started working for a crypto exchange called Nikkei, and this is all where everything began for me. Because back in 2018, the industry was super buzzing. There was event every day, and it was very easy to build up a network and to get to know everybody. And I did many things. I was a board member for Crypto Valley Association. We started up the Open VASP Association. I worked for this little crypto exchange, but then I also worked for a miner. I was advising startup, organizing event, and for the last past year, I've been with BitMEX. And I've also been advising a crypto startup called Skyline Digital, which is doing payment, and another one which is called Nextera ID. And I'm super passionate about crypto. I really like to bring people together. I love talking about it. And one of my passions is also the private-public partnership.
Speaking about recent news, because we could not mention them, namely rise of prices in Bitcoin and Ethereum. Meanwhile, Ethereum was actually more prominent than Bitcoin. In your opinion, why did it happen so?
So I think there's different things playing here. So first, as you may know, Ethereum was a proof of work blockchain and it transitions to being a proof of stake blockchain. And I think that will boost the value of Ethereum, not only because it's becoming more environment friendly, but there is also all this notion of staking. So staking refers to locking up assets to participating in running a blockchain network and maintaining its security in return for yield. So basically, you can stake Ethereum and you get a return on your stake. So when you're a holder like me, like I believe in the technology, so I hold my coins. I don't want to sell them. No, I can hold them and I can get some revenue out of it with Ethereum. That's one thing. And I think the other thing is also like Ethereum is a smart contract base, and that it has become like the infrastructure layer for a vast majority of project and blockchain application. And as the network adoption grows, Ethereum is offering holder of Ethereum currency the opportunity to participate in the network through staking. Then another thing is like there's going to be like a major upgrade of the Ethereum blockchain, which is called the Duncan upgrade, that is happening on March 13. And it's known from proto-dunk sharding feature. And what this is going to be, it's supposed to lower the cost for all the layer 2 blockchain to store data on the main chain. And this reduction will probably pass along to user and lower fees. And the fourth thing is, as you may have known, very recently, the SEC has approved the launch of Bitcoin ETF, but there is also a lot of application for Ethereum ETF. It's been postponed by the SEC, but I believe like in a few months, this will come live. So I think that all those things together may explain why, Ethereum is like racing so fast. However, I believe, and this is something you guys should really follow up, because I think there is a small revolution happening underground, and not a lot of noise is being made about that. Bitcoin is going to picking up because if you've been following the news, a lot of things are happening. So I think DeFi is coming to Bitcoin. So for instance, it started during the bear market with the emergence of ordinals. And ordinals are a means of creating Bitcoin NFTs by attaching data such as image or videos to an individual Satoshi on the Bitcoin blockchain itself. And that was a great success. It attracted a lot of interest, and there was a lot of debate, like, is Bitcoin blockchain really meant for it or no? The purists will say no. The other one will say, yeah, we're going to bring DeFi to Bitcoin. And then another thing that is happening, there is some companies, and I'm thinking about one which is called Babylon. And Babylon is offering a marketplace for Bitcoin as a staking assets. So basically, it's bringing staking to Bitcoin, which is really cool, because I know Bitcoin is a proof of work blockchain, and there were no possibility of staking, and Babylon is using technology to enable that. And another thing that is happening, so on Ethereum, you have a lot of different layers too, to make the blockchain more scalable and reduce the fees. And this is also coming to Bitcoin blockchain. And the layer 2s are protocols that are built on top of the Bitcoin blockchain, and they will provide scalability to the network by processing transactions off the main chain. And in addition, they're going to solve some difficulties and provide new functionalities to the Bitcoin blockchain, such as enhancing the programmability. So you will be able to have smart contracts on the Bitcoin blockchain. This is very powerful. It will also improve privacy and unlock new utilities. So I think there is different projects working on that. You have, for instance, Stacks. I think is one of the most well-known one. You have Liquid Network. You have Rostock, and they will law like the build-up of smart contracts. And I think this is going to be amazing when it will work and will be free live. I mean, those projects I love, but it's still like really underground. I think it's not making enough noise. So I think you guys should follow this because Bitcoin will pick up. I'm sure about that. Just, it will be like when we had the DeFi summer. I think we're going to have the Bitcoin DeFi summer coming.
I think it's interesting how you're picking up on it, on the excitement on what is going on in development, because I totally agree with you that the recent development is really just there to accelerate the growth and ultimately the utility of these two mentioned, let's call them currencies. But I think there's actually an additional layer to it in a certain way. If you look at the different aspects which we have, on the one end, you actually already mentioned the sort of more of the factual part, the regulatory environment, which has dramatically changed in recent months with the SEC. Because before we were basically hamstrung by the SEC actually cutting down. We have seen those effects of when regulation goes the wrong direction, what the impact is, and it is quite dramatic. And I know that some of the more prominent American bank CEOs are publicly still slamming ETFs on cryptocurrencies while their own departments are investing in it. It's totally contradictory and ironic in a certain way. So I think there's a lot of facts which are going on, which is like moving the whole trend into the spotlight and into a more safe and guarded and also regulated space, which I think is required for more widespread adoption. I think that's one part which we have there. And on the other hand, I think we have the more probably psychological or usage based influence, which is on the one end, we still have this almost exponential growth on crypto wallets, which I think many people underestimate, that we grow, I don't know, some say it's 25%, others say it's 35% year on year. It's probably somewhere in that ballpark, but the fact that we have an adoption of 25 to 35% year on year on wallets means that the usage will increase. And therefore, if it's a limited supply, especially on the Bitcoin, Ether, a bit more complicated to explain, but it's kept more or less stable, let's say, over the last couple of years. But if you have more users adopting it, you ultimately will have a higher demand for a limited supply. And that's long-term going to drive it. And the other effect which you haven't mentioned is we're burning. So it also means, and some get lost. So the supply is additionally reduced. And this all factored in together, theoretically, should lead to exponential growth in the next couple of years. Now, we all know there are bumps on the way, but I mean, hey, let's look at any currency in the world. Let's look at Italian lira and tell me that there were no bumps on the road. I mean, many regular currencies have suffered from that. So I think all things considered, I agree with you. There's like this newfound optimism, but I think there's more substance to it because of more regulatory framework which is needed, and that will create more trust and therefore more inflow of users and usage and more application. And I think that therefore, I think if people say we're now very high compared to, because we're now sort of breaching the all-time highs, I don't think that in 5 years we'll look back and say that was a high price. I think in 5 years we'll look back and say, damn it, we should have bought more. But hey, that's just me.
Making a step back and speaking about Bitcoin and Ethereum again, what factors do you believe will contribute for long-term sustainable growth for both of those cryptocurrencies?
That's a difficult question, but I think like there's several things to take into consideration. Like as we mentioned before, something that is really important is that they need to have like real use cases, right? Like you need to have cases, the users, they need to be able to use it and see a value in it, because if they don't see any value, I don't see how this is going to last, right? Something that is important also is like blockchain should solve real world problem in order to foster. And like as Mark mentioned, I hope you see something that is really important to me, and is regulation. But it should be combined with innovation. So innovation and regulation, they will bring more institutional in the game, and they will also make people more comfortable investing and using the blockchain technology, right? And something else too is education. Like, education is, I think, like one of my favorite topics. I always talk about that. All those factors together will ensure the longevity of the technology, but I have to be there, right? And I think there is still we still have a lot of work to do as an industry to get there, and also working more closely with the regulator and working all together to really build applications that are useful. We need to think about like what my dad wants, like what my friends want. I think like, I've been saying that for the last 7 years. I feel that like builders are building amazing technology, but sometimes they forgot that if you want something to be used, it needs to be useful. So if I don't need it, well, either you're a very good sell and you're going to tell me, oh, this is going to benefit to me. But why not? I think when I look at the UI, we are not there yet. Or you really solve the problems that people have. Like, for instance, just like if you look at developing countries, remittance, right? So you have like in blockchains like Stellar that are actually really have like real use cases for people to use it, right?
Maybe just to add to it, because I really like the aspect you mentioned about use cases and also usability. You indirectly also touched base on that. I think if we're looking at let's say the masses of consumers, and let's be clear, there's a fraction of the world population currently investing in cryptocurrencies and using cryptocurrencies. And there's also a very limited amount of successful use cases and companies benefiting from it. So we're at the very, very early beginnings of something. And it's logical that that will take time. And if you compare maybe to how other currencies without utility developed, and obviously let's take the US dollar for obvious reasons, the most dominant currency in the world, we need to take into account that the US dollar was launched in 1792. That's quite a long time ago. And when did the US dollar really start to impact and become a dominant currency? That was just about 100 years ago. So if you look at that time span of a traditional currency and then compare cryptocurrency, we are definitely in the very early forming years. But what is to come, we do not know. And we didn't know it was the US dollar. Most people probably would have stuck to the British pound. Good luck with that. and I think here we see something not similar, but I think we can still look back and see what the trends were, because US dollars also had all kinds of fluctuations, and has remained the dominant currency for better part of last century, and perhaps also better part of this century, but that's not clear. So if you're saying it's not clear what's happening to the cryptocurrency, it's not clear what's happening to the US dollar long term.
So you mentioned regulations, and now we see how many governmental institutions slowly pushing in regular regulations on cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies. In your opinion, are there any recent very important regulations that probably going to be very significant in the industry?
So there's a lot to say on this topic. So yeah, I mean, like as you mentioned, like regulation, as I mentioned before, like if you look at the world map, there's like more and more countries that are actually adopting regulation in relation to virtual assets and in compliance with the FATF recommendation. And I think this is really key what is happening now, because crypto are born global and digital. I always say that. And that requires global coordination, cooperation, and harmonization. Because if you have a lack of implementation, as we may still have a little bit now, criminals and terrorists can exploit those loopholes, and they will do some regulatory shopping. And this has been highlighted by the FATF during their last plenary sessions that took place end of February, and as well as by a lot of other international organizations, FSB, G20, and national authorities. But this is actually changing, and I think it's coming like to an end, to have like loopholes slowly but surely, because you have like very recently you have the Seychelles. So in the Seychelles, it's like a little tax haven paradise, right? You have you have a couple of big exchanges that are there for a reason, because in the Seychelles, you can just operate an exchange without having to comply with anything. But this is over. So Seychelles, I'm really surprised that they are moving so fast. Well, I know why they are moving fast. they're having an audit by the FATF by, I think, in September or October this year. So their plan is to launch a VASP licensing regime by the end of this month. I'm not sure they're going to maintain their target, but this is what they said. And I find it pretty amazing that a country like the Seychelles is going that direction. And I think it's going to be more and more difficult for VASP and exchanges to operate within the world right now without having to comply with regulation and being licensed and registered to operate from countries and thus having control in place. You also had like recently Nigeria and Turkey that are really trying to put regulation in place. So I think like it's slowly changing. And something that is really interesting is, for instance, in the case of the Seychelles, they are really willing to talk with the private sector. And I think most regulators in the world, they took this approach where they approach the private sector to guide them and educate them. And I think like this is something that is really cool that is happening right now. We had many conversations with the Seychelles, and I think this is really, really great. And that's something that is happening right now, that regulators are really willing to work with the private sector. And in the case of crypto, it's very important because we were talking about tech. If you don't understand the tech, you can't be a good compliance officer, you can't be a good lawyer, and you can't be a good regulator. So that's really important. But when it comes to regulatory news, obviously we can't talk about regulatory news without talking about the elephant in the room. I mean, there are several ones at the moment, but I mean, like the biggest one is the EU with the MiCA regulation, right? It's entering into force in June for stablecoin issuers, and then it's entering into force at the end of December for all the virtual asset service providers that would need to be registered or have a license. This regulation is really cool because you will get a license, I don't know, maybe in France, and then you can passport it in all the 27 member states. And I think like this is going to be changing a lot of things, bringing regulatory clarity. Is bringing like a legal framework where crypto project can operate, and this is fantastic. And I think it's a really good news for the industry. And then on the other hand, you have the US, right? And the US is an absolute mess. At least, like I'm not specialized in US, but from the outside, it's an absolute mess. Like recently, you have Shapeshift that has settled charges with the SEC. And the SEC said to Shapeshift that they have sold securities for at least 79 crypto assets, but they don't name it. Okay, so you're like, why? What's wrong with you? And then there was like another case recently where a court, I think it was on Friday, says that trading of certain crypto assets on the secondary market are securities transactions. And the case was about, remember, there was a judgment it was an insider trading case, and the judgment is against Samir Ramani, and he was using confidential information to trade token before they were listing. I think it was on Coinbase. And also, in the US, there is no clear regulation. The SEC is saying something, the FTC is saying something else. I think there was like an article this morning of the chief of the CFTC saying that Bitcoin and Ethereum are commodities, and then you have the SEC going after projects, and US is complete mess. And then you have Asia, and in Asia, they are also bringing regulatory clarity, and they are going strong to put a regulation in place recently with Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, that has been like at the forefront of regulation, Japan, South Korea. You also have Thailand that have regulation. So in Asia, there is also a lot of things happening, and they are going really strong. And of course, Switzerland, we have always been at the forefront of regulation since 2017 with the first guidance on the topic. So I think like there's a lot of things going on, and regulation are important to protect the financial system and customer and provide them with a safe environment. And sometimes, I feel that people completely forgot why regulation are important. Like if you look at regulation around financial crime, the purpose is to prevent money laundering. And what is money laundering? Money laundering, if there is a crime, then the crime, you make money with your crime, and then you need to launder money, and you can use crypto to do that. So at the beginning, it's coming from a crime, right? So regulation are here for us to live in a better world, because like so the predicate offense for money laundering, it could be human trafficking, it could be drugs, romance crime, and there's a lot of killing involved, right? So regulation is to protect the world, right? But another thing is it provides regulatory clarity, and it really gives the rules to play the game so that builder of technology, they can focus on building great things, and they can focus on what is the customer need, instead of trying to focusing on who they're going to avoid to be fined by the regulator, which in the US, I think we haven't resolved that problem yet, but all over the world, it brings regulatory clarity. And I think with regulation coming, then we will see the technology skyrocket with like new cool application being built.
So one of the major issues on the web adoption of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology is a lack of education and lack of information among people. How can we increase the knowledge of these technologies, and when can we expect these topics to be taught in universities and public schools?
So I think you can already do certificate. I think MIT is providing that, Harvard, they're all providing like short courses. Some of them are free, some of them you need to pay for it. But they are still really niche. Like, and those who are really doing a good job in that is like, if you look at all the service provider in the blockchain industry, a lot of them have small courses on what is blockchain, what is cryptocurrencies. I'm thinking about Chainalysis here. I think they have really, really cool classes, and they explain very well. But yeah, we are kind of far away of having really classes, I think, in the public education system, right? But I think like when it comes to education, the industry has such a big role, and there's so much work to do. And it's been 7 years. I mean, this industry hasn't changed, but I think the industry is slowly getting more organized to actually use advocacy, not to educate regulators and government officials around the world on the power of the technology and how it will change the world. And it's also like the industry also needs to do more work to work with the consumer. But at the end of the day, I don't think people should know exactly how we work, because like, do I know my phone work? Do I care? No, I don't care. I just want my phone to work. I have my apps on it and use my apps. I don't care what is the technology behind it. And I think like, if we talk about blockchain and cryptocurrency, for a lot of people, is like, oh my God, what is it? But it's getting better. I think NFT was the first step to show people that it has actually a real utility. We are back on utility and usability. And then you have like companies. One company that I find it's amazing what they do to actually educate people and work toward education is called Chili's. I'm sure you guys know about it. It's a French company that is at the origin of fan token. And with the fan token, it's always fun to vote on certain decision made by club support. It gives them enhanced experience during the game. And I think it like having companies like that using the blockchain, they really make things real and tangible. And education is part of that. You need to make things playful so that people, it makes them understand better. Another thing that I've stumbled about, I think it was a few weeks ago, and I find it really interesting. It's an app called Moonwalk Fit. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm going to try that, where customers contribute to cryptocurrencies to join a challenge. And then if they fail to meet their daily step goal, they surrender the money to a prize pool by other participants. And I think like it's really, education is about that. It's like, we have a big job to do toward regulators, government, because they need to put regulation in place and they need to understand. But the public, they just need to use the app right and use it in a fun way and with gamification, because my dad does not care about the technology. If I start to explain to him what's the difference between proof of work and proof of stake, he'll say, oh my God, like, I don't understand what you're talking about. And do we care? My dad maybe just want to invest in crypto. He doesn't care, you know? Or, yeah, so I hope it replies the question.
I think it makes a lot of sense. Maybe just to add a little bit there, I think we have three main, surprisingly, maybe we have three main players we need to influence. On one end, we touch base on the users. And rightfully, I think users do not need to know all the technical details of it. But I think what we need to start in early education is financial education. And crypto is part of financial asset allocation in a certain way, and part of technical capabilities. And I think that's more the bigger topic. We need to make children or younger generation more aware of the opportunities we have and also the downfalls we have in the financial system. And that is not really being taught. Financial system is still being taught as there is the financial system, and then there's this sketchy segment which you don't want to know about. And we need to get rid of that. We need to open up on that end. We touched the other part, which is the public institutions, which are financial banks, the regulators, etc. I think that's then more of a public-private partnership, which you need to look into. And then I think we have the companies, and companies who are interested in technology and in the future of their business model. I think they sooner or later will have to get their hands into the topic of Web3 technologies and blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And cryptocurrencies may be for hedging purposes, maybe how can they derive the utility for my business model. And that's where the companies need to invest their talent and put them on those projects, because otherwise they might be missing out on the future. So I think we have those three dimensions. We have the user base, we have the regulator, public-private, and we have the companies which need to invest. And that triangle actually, in my opinion, will just grow exponentially. And that's why I'm super optimistic about the overarching trend in the next couple of years. I think Delphine as well. So I think let's just dive into it. And that's why we're creating this format within Lab 51, that we take experts and invite them like Delphine to be part of this, because I think it is important that people know about it, and also companies know about that they should dive into what the opportunities are.
And we would like to thank you, Delphine, for participating in our podcast. And we are looking forward for our viewers to follow us and stay tuned and watch next edition of Yumi Web3 podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoy it. I'm very pleased. Thank you so much.
Delphine, big thank you from my side as well. It was great having you here. A lot of fun. And yeah, we definitely need to follow up on this. This is great. And there's so much going on.